I'm Tanya Fox, and you're listening to Fox Talks Business Podcast. I started my career in the corporate world, but always played to my own tune and loved to think outside of the box. This didn't always serve me well with the bosses, so I made the decision to become an entrepreneur. And that little seed of entrepreneurial curiosity continued to grow as I branched out into retail, service, and franchise businesses. Now, I have been fortunate to have amazing successes in the last 2 decades, but they did not come without some really big failures and even bigger lessons learned. And that's why I started this podcast, not just to share the failures, but to show you how you can turn every failure into a success. We're going to hear from some amazing humans from around the world that are going to share their stories of the good, the bad, and the motivational entrepreneurial life has to offer. After all, life is too short to make all of the mistakes yourself, so why not learn from each other? And of course, we're going to have some fun, because as I always say, well, you know what? I'll tell you that at the end of the episode. So thank you so much for coming on the show today, Mark. I'm really excited to talk to you about pricing today.
Well, you're welcome, Tanya. It's a pleasure to be here. And pricing is my passion. So I look forward to discussing lots of really helpful advice and tips with your audience about how we can improve our pricing.
Well, and I think this is one subject that definitely, we'd like to think we put a lot of thought in, but I think that people are going to get some really big insights. But before we get into some of the tips that you're going to give us a little bit of background on sort of how you came to want to do this avenue.
Yeah, sure. So I was in corporate life for 25 years, working for big brands in the UK and also DHL, International Shipping Company, in various roles in product management, in marketing, in sales. And my final position, I ran a £25 million division. And as part of that, experience, price always played a part in what I did. So I learned a lot of things along the way. And then when I left a few years ago now, 3.5 years ago, I wanted to work for myself. I wanted to run my own business. And I spent quite a bit of time trying to work out what I was going to focus on, knowing I was going to target small and medium-sized businesses. And I just had my eureka moment. Nobody talks about pricing, particularly when it comes to small businesses. Yet for me, that's one of the most important aspects of running any business. So I said, right, that's going to be my lot. I'm going to focus on pricing and nothing else. And actually, when you start to look at it, well, A, I find it fascinating. And B, there are loads of different ways that you can use to improve your pricing, whether it's how we present our prices, how we structure them, all sorts of different ways that we'll probably touch on today. So the point is, it's very powerful, and there's a lot of simple things that you can do that will make a real difference. So yeah, that's how I got into pricing.
Well, and I think that I love that you got into it because I think it is an important subject that not a lot of people talk about. But when you get into, a sticky situation in business, that's really what it comes down to. How are we either going to cut costs or how are we going to raise our prices? But you're right. I had a retail store, and you really kind of are guessing a lot and going, well, I hope this works. So let's dive a little bit into talking about some of the tips, because one of the questions that we got from, that we put out to our audience, which was a big one in the retail industry, was that magic number that we always hear about for the margin. So tell us a little bit about, is there such thing as a magic number that you're supposed to mark up, or how do you deal with that?
Yeah. Okay. So let's deal with this right at the head, because this is a really important question. And the reason it's important is because people want an easy answer, right? So the reason people are saying, is there a magic markup figure that I can use to work out my prices? Because we all know our cost prices, right? Especially in retail, you get a wholesale price, a supply price, whatever it is. That's very clear. So what you're looking for is a simple formula that helps you work out the best price to sell that bought-in product at. Now, here's the bad news. There is no magic formula in pricing at all. There just isn't one. What there is you can get a lot closer to an ideal price by putting a bit more thought, a bit more effort, and a bit of creativity into how you think about your pricing. So, and I'll come on to that more as we go through the conversation today. But back to this question of, what's the ideal markup? I mean, it varies hugely, right? So I'm working with a small supermarket chain in the UK, and their markups range from 15% for commodity items like milk, up to way over 100% for specialist items. So it depends entirely on the product. It depends on the business. It depends on the market you're in, and it depends on your competition. And ultimately, it depends on your customers' willingness to pay. So, sorry to say, there is no magic formula. There is no magic markup number. There might be common practice in your industry, in your audience's industry. So, that's helpful to understand, but don't let it be the be all and end all when it comes to your pricing, because there are some other ways to think about how to set your pricing and how to position your prices rather than just cost plus margin, so cost plus margin is the pricing strategy the world over uses, right? And the reason everybody uses it is because everybody else uses it. So we think it must be the right way to do business. So it's okay as a starting point. It's fine as a starting point, but actually it's the least optimal pricing strategy there is. And there are lots of different ways to think about pricing. So yeah, unfortunately, there is no magic formula. But some of the things that we'll go on to talk about will hopefully help your listeners address, where do we pitch our prices?
Well, and I even love the tips that you gave of things to think about, because I think what happens, especially when somebody's starting out, if they don't have a huge background, especially if it's retail, is that they go, well, I'll just pick the suggested retail price, but not really diving deeper into that and going, but does that make sense for where I am and where I'm purchasing from? So I think those are really great things for, people to think about. So let's talk a little bit about why small businesses are so nervous about pricing, because that's a big thing. We touched on it a little bit, but.
Yeah, sure. So I think there are 5 main reasons why people don't think about their pricing more often, and particularly for small businesses. So the first one could be, I've got a growing business, Tanya, so my pricing must be fine, right? So I'm growing, I'm successful, so therefore my pricing must be fine. So it's complacency, number one, complacency. Number 2 is inertia. We've always done our pricing like this. For the last 10 years, we've always done our pricing on a cost plus margin basis, and we just stuck with this methodology. We can't break ourselves away from it. Number 3 is difficulty. I mean, pricing's difficult, isn't it, right? There's so many things you've got to think about. There's your costs, your competitors, your customers, and do you know what? I'm just going to leave that to one side because it's just too difficult for me to get my head around. Number 4 is ignorance, in the sense that I don't know how else to do my pricing. I can look at my competitors and I can look at my costs and I can use those as benchmarks, but how else do you do pricing? So we lack awareness of other ways to do it. And then finally, the last one, number 5, is fear. Yeah, I'm scared that if I put my prices up, I'm going to lose customers, and I don't know how my competitors might react. So, I'd invite the audience to think, which one of those is most true for you, hand on heart, when you look at yourself and answer the question honestly. Which one of those is most true for you? And there's no right or wrong here. They're all equally applicable. But my belief is that the underlying reason for all of them is number 5, fear. Yeah, so it's a major emotional and psychological block that stops us spending more time thinking about our pricing strategy. So we're just scared, right? It's difficult, it's fearful, it involves personal rejection. So we're trying to sell our services or our products, and people say, no, we don't want that because, and we tend to conclude that price is the major reason why people don't buy from us. But that's not necessarily always the case. So fear is the major blockage. But if you can get past that fear by thinking about your pricing more strategically, it will give you a lot more confidence. So if you're selling your own services, if you're a consultant or a coach or whatever, having a clearly thought out pricing strategy is going to make a huge difference to your confidence. Or if you're a retailer or a product supplier, being very clear on your price positioning in the market is desperately important, because everything flows from that. Yeah, so you might say, well, we're a premium priced provider of services, so everything that you do has to be at a premium level. Or you could say, no, we just want to occupy the mid-market, the middle of our market. We want to be competitive and offer great value. Or you can say, yeah, we want to be the cheapest. Yeah, we're going to play the price game, and we want to offer the cheapest range of products and services that it's possible to get in our market. So you need to be very clear on your desired price positioning right from the start, and then focus everything around that. Because if you're not clear yourself, you'll get dragged down by your competitors and by customers that drive a hard bargain. So be very clear on your price positioning would be my first tip. Is it premium, mid-market, competitive, or really, really, bargain basement? That would be a really good starting point, I would suggest.
I like what you touched on with, in the service industry, because I think that, almost is one that seems hard to price, because it's, you don't have that suggested retail price. You can, of course, look at, competitors and other people that are doing the same things. But I think there's so many people that are out there that are like, but I do something different, or it's not quite the same. Or so how do you know if you're pricing yourself high enough or too high? And then what do you do to fix that? Because I think then sometimes you kind of get stuck and you go, well, I don't know, like if I drop my price, are then people gonna, be like, well, why is it all of a sudden cheaper now?
Really good question. Lots to answer here. So let me try and work my way through it. I think the first point I would make is if you're just starting out and you're a sole business owner, or you're selling your services, a consultant, a coach, trainer, a freelancer, whatever it is, the temptation is to start at whatever you perceive to be the bottom of that price ladder. Yeah, so if you're charging a day rate, an hourly rate, whatever it is, you say, well, I'm new, so I'm going to aim, I'm going to price myself at the lower end of that price spectrum, and I'm going to work my way up once I get some experience. Yeah, that's a typical place to start. What I would say to that is you're starting at totally the wrong end of the ladder. What you need to do is to work out how you can start as high as possible and make the value of your service worth the price you're charging. Let me give you an example. I was talking to a lady who'd had a career in project management, working for large corporates, running large projects, and she wanted to become an independent project management consultant. So she made exactly this point to me. She said, Mark, I'm just starting out. I feel I've got to price myself at the low end of the market, which in the UK was £300 a day, and work my way up. I said, hang on a second. You've been working as a highly skilled project manager for the last 25 years. That makes you an extremely capable person in terms of the skill that you're offering. So you need to be pricing in the whole of your experience, right? So all of the previous jobs, all of your skills and qualities, all of your personal attributes, because that's what people are buying into. Yeah, so I managed to persuade her that given her experience, she should be pricing herself towards the top end of the scale and saying, like, I'm an extremely qualified, highly capable project manager, and I will make your projects run like clockwork. And my day rate is X, whatever the number was. So that's the first tip. Start as high as you can. And if you really need to, if you find that you've just gone a bit too high, which I bet most people will never have this problem, it's far better to come down in price, say from £800 a day down to £600 a day. It's far easier and better to do that than to start at £300 a day and eke it up to £330 a day or £350. It's a far harder battle, and it will take you a much longer time to get to where you want to be. First point. Second point is, having just given an example of day rates and hourly rates, I think it's far better if you can, depending on the nature of your business, and I'm conscious I'm talking about service providers here, so we'll come on to product businesses in a second, far better to always quote a fixed project fee. Let me give you an example. Imagine you were a website designer and you built websites for small to medium-sized businesses. And I'm just going to make up some numbers here, but let's say you charge $500 a day, and you say to the prospective buyer, I've looked at all your requirements and I think that'll take me 10 days of my time, and I charge $500 a day, right? So as a buyer, I hear $500 a day at 10 days. So I judge your service as a cost, right? If instead you were to say, yeah, I've looked at all of your requirements, I've worked out the best solution for you, here's the proposal, it does everything that you need, and the investment is $5,000. Okay, so as a buyer, I hear a very different thing. What I hear is an investment figure, and if it's an investment, what I want to know is what return am I going to get on my investment. So more sales, more leads, more traffic, more awareness on a website, for example. Whereas if you quote a day rate or an hourly rate, I judge your time as a cost. Yeah, so two subtly different but very important distinctions. Yeah, so in answer to your question, it's far better to quote fixed project prices or program fees or whatever to encourage your buyer to see it as an investment, rather than just quoting a day rate and saying, yeah, it's $300 a day, or it's $5, whatever the number is. First point. Second point. So in terms of the question, what if I pitch it too high? How do I roll back? Or what if I haven't charged enough? So we're always going to have this problem, right? So in every market, there are going to be customers who think your price is spot on. There'll be customers who think it's too cheap. So you're not the right person for me. And there'll be customers who think your price is really expensive and there's no way I can afford your services. So the trick here, whenever you're presenting a price, whether you do it face-to-face or on a written document, is to provide customers with choice, a high, a medium, and a low price point. So you have to adapt the proposal so that it offers increasing value. And again, I'm just going to make up some numbers. So let's say the website guy, let's think about him again. So instead of just giving one number, $5,000, the customer, in that situation, the buyer, they either like the price or they don't, right? They either like it or they don't. It's either too expensive, too cheap, or it's okay. What you can do to increase your chances of success is give two, ideally three options: a low price, a mid price, and a high price. So let me explain. If you want three numbers and you want them spaced out like this. So we can do a light website using templates, and that's going to cost you $3,000. Or we can do a standard response, which gives you everything that you need for $5,000. Or we can offer you our super deluxe, solid gold-plated, high-quality premium service, which includes loads of extra bells and whistles and videos and integrations, and that's $10,000, right? So we're giving our customer three price points to choose from: a $10,000 premium option, a $5,000 standard option, and a $3,000 entry price option, if you like. And we have to give them all three options and the three prices. And it's best if you sell high to low, so 10, 5, 3 in that order. And what we're doing here is, because we're not sure how much our buyers are willing to pay, we're increasing the odds in our favor of presenting them with a price point that they like, right? And if you do that, rather than just presenting one number and crossing your fingers that they're going to like it, if you present three numbers, you massively increase your chances of A, getting the sale, and B, getting the sale at a higher price. Because as a buyer, two things happen. If you tell me the premium solution is £10,000 or dollars or whatever the number is, as a buyer, I think, wow, you guys are brilliant. That's a really high quality service, but I know I can't afford that. So which of the other two options best meets my needs at a price I want to pay? Yeah, does that make sense? So the job of the premium price is not necessarily to be sold. Its job is to act as a high price anchor and influence your customer over which choice of the other two options do I want. And it also acts as a center of gravity, and it will pull up your average price. And final point, just on this little section, by presenting your prices like that, you drag up your average prices. And the mistake that particularly small businesses make is we always like to refer to the lowest price in our product range. So we like to say prices from $10,
Right.
$100, whatever the number is, prices from, and then it goes up from there. Far better to start by saying, well, our premium option is, whatever that high number is, and then come down. So you sell high to low rather than going low to high. Because as a buyer, if you start at a low number, you've anchored my expectation already. If your lowest price is $99, but the price you really want to sell me is $200, that's twice the price, right? Because if you come the other way, it's $1,000 for the premium product, but actually there's an option which is $300. Well, okay, well, that's a lot more reasonable. Yeah. Oh, and if you're really price sensitive, there's a $99 version as well. Does that make sense? I hope I've
It
explained.
does. No, it really does. And it's funny because, it's such a simple idea, but it's really true. And as you're saying it, I'm even thinking that is something that I see all the time, right? Prices starting from, or, it's always the lowest deal. But you're right that even, I think if people even sit there and think themselves, you do get stuck. Like when you see prices from, I mean, how often do you go in somewhere and go, well, where's the one that's the $5.99? Like, I don't see any of that. I see all of the higher ones. So that's an interesting, it seems, like I said, it seems so simplistic, but even myself, I'm like, oh, that's a really good tip.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive, isn't it? And this is the thing with good pricing is a lot of what I talk about is counterintuitive, and it goes against normal business practice. So normal business practice says you have to promote your cheapest price first, right? But actually, if you turn that on its head and say, well, hang on a second, we can use an understanding of pricing psychology and how we as buyers make pricing decisions, and understand that if you sell prices high to low, whether that's verbally over the phone or on a website or in a printed proposal document, you influence your customer's perception of value. And as they come down the options, they know they're getting a better deal. So they're more likely to choose.
And that's true. Like I was even thinking too, like, even, if you have a retail store, I remember my husband saying, because we had a bread franchise. So of course, stocking shelves was very important, and where you place stuff and all of that other. And he always would say to me, stop putting your cheapest, it was a craft store, so I'm going to use that as an example, but stop putting your cheap yarn at the front of the shelf, put that at the back and at the bottom, because people will see all of the other stuff first. But it's funny that I'm sitting there going, why didn't I convert that over to pricing?
Exactly. So in retail, so let's touch on that quickly. So how you position your products and their prices in the shop is really important. So retailers in your audience might be thinking, well, Mark, how do I do that high, medium, low thing for my customers? So, I mean, I can't, pretend to guess at, what kind of stores or retail outlets your audience is working in. But the trick to remember is to have at least some premium products prominently displayed, right? And remember that their job is not to be sold. Their job is to position in the mind of the buyer a high expectation of quality. Wow, these guys sell, $10 products, but I'm only looking for a $2 product. So so I can see the $10 option, and there might be a $5 option, and there's a $3 option. You want to make the display of your products, you want to emulate that 3-tier pricing idea that I talked about as best you can. Yeah. So it's called, product versioning is one thing it gets known as. Think of Apple. I mean, they're past masters of product versioning, right? So they have, however many iPhone versions now, and each of them is designed at a specific price point. Yeah. So they're very clear about what price point they want the product to hit. Yeah. So there's a version of a product that will meet the vast majority of their market's needs at a price they're willing to pay. So as a buyer, I can make my choice. Do I want an iPhone 10 at $1,300 or whatever the price is, or will the new iPhone 6X at half the price do the job? It's that mentality that you need to get your head around. So how we position and present our products and prices is arguably more important than what the number is that we choose to charge for the product. Yeah, does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, I think there's so much there. So let's talk a little bit about, so we kind of have an idea of of what we want our numbers to be, but what things do we need to take into consideration when we're figuring out that number? Because I think we touched on it a little bit, that people look and they go, well, I know what my cost is, but what are some of the other things that maybe people don't take into consideration when trying to figure out what their end price should be for product or service?
Yeah. So a good place to start is the 3 C's: customers, competitors, costs, right? So for most businesses, they will know what their costs are for a wholesale product, or at least their unit cost to provide a service. And they might have some idea of what their competitors charge. So those are 2 useful reference points, but they're not the be all and end all. The mistake that many businesses make is, well, I know what my costs are, and I know roughly what my competitors charge, so I'm just going to find a sweet spot somewhere in the middle there, and that's it. And the trouble with that is you are giving up your pricing strategy and the success of your business to your competitors and your suppliers, and you're not putting any effort into working out at what price level you should be charging for the value of your products or services. So the most important group is customers, of course. It all starts with customers. And as I mentioned earlier, the trick to remember within your market is that there are always different levels of price sensitivity. You'll have customers who are highly price sensitive and they can't afford to pay very much for your product or service at one end of the scale. And at the other end, you'll have customers who are willing to pay more for what you do because they value things other than price. So that's why having 3 price points is so effective, because you don't know who's going to walk into your shop or pick up the phone, right? You don't know what their level of price sensitivity is. So if you spread your prices, you're more likely to be able to present them with a price that meets, most of their needs most of the time. You'll never get it perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect price, right? It's impossible to find, but you can get an awful lot closer to it by thinking about it more strategically. So customers, competitors, costs. The second group that I talk about are the 4 P's of pricing. So product, price, people, profit. Okay, what is your product range? How do we price it? And those 2 are closely intertwined. People, in other words, how do we sell? How do we communicate our prices? And what impact does that have on our profits? And pricing is absolutely about profit and not revenue growth. It does support revenue growth, but fundamentally, it's about profit growth. There's a great rule of thumb, I think McKinsey invented it, which is that a 1% increase in your prices should yield approximately a 10% increase in your net profits. What other thing can you do in your business that you can make a change overnight and it will put 10% growth on your bottom line? There isn't anything else.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting thought experiment. I invite your listeners to do this. At what price point, at what price in terms of a percentage increase could you increase your prices by tomorrow without it affecting sales volume or client satisfaction? at what price point could you increase your prices by without it affecting sales volume or client satisfaction? So hopefully people have thought of a number, but when I ask that question in workshops or in seminars, you typically get a range of anything from 1% to 5%, maybe 10%. I've even heard 20%, right? But typically it's in the low percents, 1 to 3%. And this is the point, right? So if you've just answered that question correctly, I asked you, at what price increase could you increase your prices by without it affecting sales volume or client satisfaction? And you came up with a number greater than 0. What's stopping you tomorrow going out and putting up your price by that amount? Yeah, what's stopping you? Because you've just proven to yourself that you could increase prices by 1 or 2% and it's going to make no difference. Yet it's going to put a 10% increase at the very least on your bottom line. And this is the thinking that we don't go through, right? We don't tend to think the power of a small price increase. Yeah, the power of a small price increase in terms of profit improvement. 1% or 2% on your prices, if sustainable, will make a massive difference on your bottom line. Conversely, the reverse is also true, but in a damaging way. We often think, well, if I need more sales, I'm just going to reduce my prices slightly. Yeah.
I was going to ask about that, about sales. Yeah.
So I'm going to run a promotion or a discount, and let's say, we have a gross margin on a product of 20%, so quite small. And if I think, well, I'm selling my product for $100, my gross margin is $20, so I have a unit cost of $80. Yeah, I'm going to reduce my price by $5. So hopefully I'm going to sell more at $95 than I would at $100. But now my gross margin is $15. So I'm going to have to sell an awful lot more products at that reduced margin just to stand still in terms of what I take out of the sale, right? So the impact of a price reduction is far greater than in a worse sense, than the upside you'll get from a small price increase. Does that make sense? Hopefully I've explained that properly, but it's such a powerful lever, price. If you pull it either way, it's going to have a huge impact on your business. And it's important that people do the numbers to work that out, I think.
Well, and I think it's true, like, even if you think about, even if we go with the 1%, if you think about a 1% increase, that people wouldn't really notice that on the shelves per se, or when they're buying from you. But if you tried to offer a 1% discount, it would be almost insulting.
Yeah.
They'd be like, what's the point, in that? Yeah, so it's interesting to sort of really, think about it in that aspect. Yeah. Because people often do think of that, well, I'll have a sale, business is slow, I need to sort of drum up some more customers. So I'll just throw some things on sale and then hopefully bring in some more money, but not actually realizing, are you actually bringing in any more money, or, No.
Yeah, because you'll find that the number of items you need to sell at the reduced price and reduced margin is much higher than you realize, just to break even on your previous position. A better tip, so don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with having strategically thought through price promotions and discounts, as long as you're clear on your numbers. Another way to think about it is, rather than cutting my price, what value can I add to my product? Yeah, so I could sell a higher grade of products at my standard price. Yeah, or if I'm offering a service, so let's do the product example first. So if I've got a normal product at £100 and a premium product at £130, I can say, well, for a temporary period, limited time frame, you can buy the premium spanner for £100. Yeah, so you're not lowering that price point, you're offering more value. The other way to do it is, if you're providing you're in a service business, let's say it's consulting or coaching or some kind of freelance thing, you say, well, my standard rate for a half-day workshop would be $500, whatever the number is, but rather than discounting it down to $400, keep it at $500, but throw in more content. So in addition to that, I'll give you a free diagnostic report and one-to-one coaching with 3 of your senior managers as well for the same price. So you're adding more value. So in terms of your take home, it might reduce it slightly, your take home pay, but you're maintaining that all important price position. Warren Buffett, the world's most famous and successful investor, famously says that pricing is the most important thing that he looks at when he decides whether to or not to invest in a business. And he famously says discounting is for dummies. And even more so in a recession or a downturn, it's the last thing you should do, because what you do is never temporary, right? People get used to a lower price, and then your price level slips down a rung, and then it slips down another rung, and then it slips down another rung, because you're always competing on price. I've seen this in large corporates and in small businesses. We're all guilty of it. Far better to compete hard on value, add more value than price. Yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
And I think that's true for a lot, especially, now, and I think this has always been that, small businesses, and I'll just talk about retail as, to put it into context for people, is that when you're a small business and you have an item that, say, you're competing with like large box stores that are in your area, of course, they buy at higher volume, so they're able to offer cheaper prices. And then people go, well, I can't offer it at that price, but not realizing. But I think I love what you said, the tip about just considering the difference in even the service that you offer. So yes, the big box store might offer that item cheaper, but you can get it in stock, you can special order it, you have the customer service for it, stuff like that equates to you having $1, $2, or whatever it is more.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to price in that extra value. Because if I was a customer of that local store, I know perfectly well that I can get a much cheaper product from the big shop down the end of the road. But I like coming to your store, and I like you, and I like buying local. So if the big store is selling it for 50 quid and buying $50 and buying it at $30, and you're selling it at, well, let's say you're buying it at $40 because that's the best price for the volume that you can get. So the margin is at 50 quid is only $10. Look, go the other way. Stick an extra $1 on it and say, look, well, I charge $51 or $52 because A, I'm a small business and I can't buy with the same power that the big guys can, but B, you're getting more for your money from me. You're getting a local service, it's in stock, I'll deliver it personally to your home address. You've got to be clear on what your value story is. It's not just about price, it's your brand, it's your reputation, it's the additional service that you provide, it's your friendly staff, whatever it is, and be clear on those things, and don't be afraid to price that in to the price for the end product, because that's what people are buying into, right? It's the whole thing, it's the whole experience, not just the unit price of the product.
Yeah. And I love what you said about making, be sure that you're being clear about that, because I think oftentimes we know that, or we think that, but we don't actually let our customers or our clients know this is the reason why I'm more expensive, because we're scared, right? We get stuck. Like you said, it becomes that fear factor thing where we get stuck purely on the number. Yeah,
exactly right. I had a client recently in terms of illustrating that point, they worked in engineering, right? They provide engineering services, which is a cutthroat industry. They work on tiny margins, 3% operating margin, incredibly. But this client, they were very proud of the quality of their service that they provide. And the owner said something to me, which I really liked. He said, Mark, it's not about what we do. It's not even how we do it. It's why we do it that's important. And why we do it is to be the best. I said, Stephen, that's brilliant. You should turn that into a strap line or a positioning statement and make that clear to your customers. So his target customers will know that if they're going to shop with his business, they know that their fundamental goal is to always be the best in whatever it is that they do. So therefore, they're probably going to be a bit more expensive, right? So being clear on your positioning and how you articulate the value of what you do is just as important in terms of supporting your price position as the number. So, strong branding, great customer service, fast delivery, wide stock availability, friendly customer service, whatever it is that you do, all of those things support your price position and support the value of what you do. So focus on them and make sure people know about it too. Tell them, look, we charge an extra $1 because X, Y, Z, and work out those reasons. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, letting go of that fear factor of,
Yes.
Being worried about, I guess I guess it goes back to that old saying, you don't know unless you ask.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right.
So if someone is sitting there and they're like, I don't know if I'm priced right, or I don't, I think I am, I feel like I am, like we had mentioned before, like I'm making good money, but when is a good time for them to then look to somebody like you to say, when would I need somebody like you? When do I kind of flip that switch and go, maybe I should have somebody come and take a look at this?
Sure. So I think there's lots of different scenarios that people might find themselves in. So it could be they just don't know where to pitch their prices, right? So it could be that we've come up with a new product or service, and it's quite different to what we currently do. So it could be an online service as opposed to a physical service, for example. It's quite different, and we just got no idea how to price it. So that could be a motive or a reason to consider getting in external help. It could just be, I've worked with small businesses where the owner was frustrated that their sales team was always offering discounts, for example, and he just couldn't grow his revenue and his gross margins. He had a great website, he had great products, he had great marketing, but a poor performing sales team in terms of their ability to communicate price and sell price at a level that was justified. It could be that you're finding your gross margins are being squeezed. Yeah, so your supply costs are rising, which in the current turbulent times is quite common in many business areas. Shipping costs are rising, raw material costs are rising. So supply costs are rising, yet we've held our price at the same level. So we're being squeezed. So what do we do about this, Mark? What else? Lots of it's those kind of pain scenarios that people might want to consider help. And by the way, there's plenty of experts in North America as well, not just me in the UK that are well worth looking at. Or we just we're at a certain place with our business and we're okay with it. We're doing okay, but we're curious to know how much better could it get. By the way, if I could offer one suggestion, Tanya,
Yes,
if you
please.
don't mind me. So this is a little plug for my website. So if listeners want to go on my website, which is www.pricemaker.co.uk, and on the homepage there is a pricing power scorecard test that people can take. It takes 5 minutes, and it's an online questionnaire. And you get a personalized report on your pricing capability with suggestions and ideas as to how you could improve your pricing free of charge, and it will give you some thoughts or ideas as to where and how you could look at your pricing. So that's another alternative. So it's get an external benchmark on your pricing, and something like that is really simple, it's easy to do. And you'll get some immediate personalized, tailored feedback on your pricing situation.
And we'll make sure that we link to that on our blog. And you also give really great tips on your social media as well, because I was it was funny because I was like, oh, what about the 3? But you mentioned all of the stuff I was going to ask about. So that's awesome. But tell people a little bit about where else they can find you besides your website and what you offer.
Best places are Twitter. So you can find me. My Twitter handle is @thepricingcoach, or on LinkedIn. So I do an awful lot on LinkedIn. So you'll find me as Mark Peacock _ the pricing coach. Those are my 2 main social media outlets as well as my website. So feel free to connect with me on either one. Feel free to follow my tips, updates, and hopefully, your listeners will get some value. No obligation, no hard sell, no marketing funnels, I promise you. My goal is always to educate and inspire people with, what better pricing can do for your business.
Well, thank you so much. You've just given so many amazing tips and just ideas that I think that people can start thinking of things differently in how they're thinking of pricing. Because I think it is something that's not talked about, but is one of the most important things in business and in surviving business, especially in this time.
Absolutely. And a final word might be, so it is that critical to business survival. People often say the reason businesses go out of business is because they run out of cash. Well, why did they run out of cash? Because they didn't have the right pricing strategy, right? It's that critical. And it pains me to see small and medium-sized businesses just getting by, on skinny margins. Whereas there's a whole world of opportunity if you just draw back those blinds and have a look behind and see what else you can do with pricing. But it's fear that's holding you back. It's fear that's stopping you do that. So try and step past that fear. Have a new look at it with a fresh pair of eyes, a sense of curiosity, and try things out. I dare all the listeners to this show to put their prices up by 1% starting tomorrow. And I bet you'll be amazed at how little an impact it has on customer demand and customer satisfaction. What a tremendous difference it makes to your bottom line. And if that works, do it again, and then do it again, and just keep doing it until you reach an upper limit in terms of customer feedback. If people start saying, "Whoa, hang on a second, you're getting expensive," then you've hit your upper price limit. So that's good, right? It's good to know what that upper price limit is. So keep pushing yourself to try different things and test what works and what doesn't. Don't be scared of pricing. It's your biggest friend if you let it be.
That's perfect way to end. And I love ending on a challenge. It has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. And I look forward to staying connected and definitely having you back on the show, because I think this is one topic that needs to be talked about more.
Brilliant. Love to come back anytime you like, Tanya. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
There was just so much jam-packed in this episode, but it was really important, like I said in last week's episode, to make sure that you are really looking strategically at your pricing, because it truly can be what makes or breaks your business. So if you're wanting a little bit more information, don't forget, as Mark said, head over to his website at PriceMaker.co.uk. And on the homepage, you will be able to take your pricing power scorecard. And what this does is it's just a small test, answer a few questions, but it's really going to be able to benchmark your ability to influence prices for increased profit, and helps you to identify some opportunities that you can create growth and even leverage that. So I encourage you all to head over there. And as well, head to our website at foxtalksbusiness.ca. Click on blogs on the left-hand side of the page. You will see this episode and all of the ways that you can connect with Mark, including a quick link to take your pricing power score test. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I really, really love hearing from you guys. So please head over to all of our social media and let me know, what was the one, takeaway that you had from this episode that you were like, oh my gosh, why didn't I think of this? Or what was your light bulb moment? I would love to hear about it. So no matter what you're doing, whether you're trying to rediscover how to do your pricing, whether you are taking Mark's very valuable advice on the 1% increase, make sure that you're finding time to have fun. Because if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?